Chapter 2. Treading the Path. Purification, refinement, surrender. These are the practical steps on the path of yoga. They nourish the state of samadhi and weaken the causes of suffering. The causes of suffering are 5: ignorance from our real nature, egoism, attachment, aversion, and the fear of death, which makes us cling to life. Ignorance of our real nature is the source of the other 4, whether they be dormant, weak, suspended, or fully active. Ignorance is the failure to discriminate between the permanent and the impermanent, the pure and impure, bliss and suffering, the self and the non-self. Egoism, the limiting sense of I, results from the individual's intellect attributing the power of consciousness to itself. Attachment is clinging to pleasure. Aversion is clinging to pain. And the fear of death is a spontaneous feeling deeply rooted in us all, no matter how learned we may be. The subtle causes of suffering are destroyed when the mind merges back into the unmanifest. The gross effects of suffering are discarded through meditation. The impressions of past action stored deep in the mind are the seeds of desire. They ripen into action in seen and unseen ways, if not in this life, then in a future one. As long as action leaves its seed in the mind, the seed will grow, generating more births, more lives, more actions. In these two, the fruit of wrong action is sorrow, the fruit of right action is joy. Life is uncertain, change causes fear, and latent impressions bring pain. All is indeed suffering to one who has developed discrimination. But suffering yet to come should be averted. The cause of suffering is that the unbounded self is overshadowed by the world. The world is the play of the gunas, the universal energies of light, motion, and mass. They take form as the elements and the senses. The purpose of the world is to provide us with the experience and thus to lead us to liberation. The gunas operate on various levels: gross, subtle, causal, and unmanifest. But the self is boundless. It is the pure consciousness that illumines the contents of the mind. It is only for the sake of the self that the world exists. Although the limitations of the world disappear for one who knows the self, they are not destroyed because they continue to exist for the others. The self is obscured by the world in order that the reality of both may be discovered. It is ignorance of our real nature that causes the self to be obscured. When ignorance is destroyed, the self is liberated from its identification with the world. This liberation is enlightenment. Ignorance is destroyed by the undisturbed discrimination between the self and the world. There are 7 stages in the growth of this wisdom. The distinction between pure consciousness and the world is revealed by the light of knowledge, when the nervous system has been purified by the practice of yoga. There are 8 limbs of yoga: yama, the laws of life; niyama, the rules of living; asana, the physical postures; pranayama, the breathing exercises; pratyahara, the retirement of the senses; dharana, the steadiness of the mind; dhyana, meditation; and samadhi, the settled mind. The laws of life are 5: nonviolence, truthfulness, integrity, chastity, non-attachment. These laws are universal, unaffected by time, place, birth, or circumstance. Together, they constitute the great law of life. The rules for living are 5: simplicity, contentment, purification, refinement, surrender to the Lord. When the negative feelings restrict us, the opposite should be cultivated. Negative feelings, such as violence, are damaging to life, whether we act upon them ourselves or cause or condone them in others. They are born of greed, anger, or delusion, and may be slight, moderate, or intense. Their fruit is endless ignorance and suffering. To remember this is to cultivate the opposite. When we are firmly established in nonviolence, all beings around us cease to feel hostility. When we are firmly established in truthfulness, action accomplishes its desired end. When we are firmly established in integrity, all riches present themselves freely. When we are firmly established in chastity, subtle potency is generated. When we are established in non-attachment, the nature and purpose of existence is understood. Simplicity destroys identification with the body and brings freedom from contact with other bodies. Purity of mind, cheerfulness, mastery of the senses, one-pointedness, and readiness for self-realization follow. From contentment, unsurpassed happiness is gained. By purification, the body and senses are perfected. Refinement brings communion with the desired celestial being. From surrender to the Lord, the state of samadhi is perfected. The physical postures should be steady and comfortable. They are mastered when all effort is relaxed and the mind is absorbed in the infinite. Then we are no longer upset by the play of opposites. Next come the breathing exercises, which suspend the flow of breath and increase the life energy. The life energy is increased by regulation of the out-breath, the in-breath, or the breath in mid-flow, depending upon the volume and the length and frequency of holding. The breathing becomes slow and refined. The 4th kind of pranayama takes us beyond the domain of inner and outer. Then the light of the intellect is unveiled, and the mind is prepared for steadiness. The senses retire from their objects by following the natural inward movement of the mind. From this comes supreme mastery of the senses.